Pierre Poilievre has always been a political force. From his early days as a young member of parliament, he was known for his fiery rhetoric and sharp attacks. Poilievre's early career was marked by a populist style that resonated with some voters. He wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo or take on his opponents. He often used strong language and wasn't afraid to court controversy. This approach made him a polarizing figure. Some were drawn to his boldness, while others were put off by his aggressive style. One example of Poilievre's early populism was his strong support for the Freedom Convoy. This protest movement, which began in early 2022, saw truckers and their supporters blockading roads and bridges in Ottawa and other cities. They were protesting COVID-19 vaccine mandates and other government policies. Poilievre's vocal support for the convoy, despite its controversial tactics, solidified his image as a champion of the people, even if it meant defying the establishment. However, Poilievre's populist approach also had its drawbacks. His sharp attacks often alienated potential allies. His focus on divisive issues made it difficult to build broad-based support. Some critics argued that his rhetoric contributed to a toxic political climate. They pointed to instances where his words seemed to encourage anger and division. As Poilievre matured politically, he began to realize the limitations of his earlier approach. He understood that to achieve real change, he needed to broaden his appeal. This realization marked a turning point in his career, leading him to adopt a more moderate and inclusive tone. In 2022, Pierre Poilievre's political journey took a significant turn. He was elected leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. This victory came after a hard-fought campaign where he positioned himself as a champion of the working class. But it also signaled a shift in his approach. No longer content with simply railing against the establishment, Poilievre began to articulate a more positive vision for the country. One of the most notable changes was his decision to moderate his stance on social issues. In the past, Poilievre had opposed same-sex marriage and expressed reservations about abortion rights. However, as Conservative leader, he adopted a more accepting tone. He acknowledged that these were settled issues for most Canadians. This shift alienated some of his more socially conservative supporters. However, it was seen as a necessary step to broaden his appeal to a wider electorate. Poilievre also made a conscious effort to tone down his rhetoric. He continued to criticize his political opponents, but he did so in a more respectful manner. He focused more on policy differences and less on personal attacks. This shift was evident in his dealings with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. While the two remained political rivals, their interactions became less acrimonious. This new approach was not without its critics. Some accused Poilievre of abandoning his principles. Others questioned whether his transformation was genuine or simply a calculated move to win votes. Nevertheless, there was no denying that Poilievre had undergone a significant evolution. He was becoming a more mature and thoughtful politician, one who seemed increasingly capable of uniting rather than dividing Canadians. Pierre Poilievre's evolution went beyond just a change in tone. He also began to stake out strong positions on issues that mattered deeply to Canadians. This was particularly evident in his response to two major events in the fall of 2024, the rise in anti-Semitism and the threat of American tariffs on Canadian goods. Following a series of anti-Semitic incidents across the country in October 2024, Poilievre took a firm stand. He condemned anti-Semitism in the strongest possible terms, calling it a scourge that had no place in Canada. He criticized Trudeau's response as being too slow and inadequate. This stance earned him praise from Jewish groups and others who had been critical of the government's handling of the issue. Poilievre's tough stance was also evident in his response to former US President Donald Trump's threat to impose tariffs on Canadian goods. Trump, who had returned to power after winning the 2024 US election, was known for his protectionist trade policies. He had previously imposed tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum during his first term. Poilievre refused to back down, vowing to retaliate against any American tariffs with measures of his own. He argued that Canada would not be bullied by its larger neighbour. These strong stances resonated with Canadians across the political spectrum. They saw in Poilievre a leader who was willing to stand up for their interests, both at home and abroad. This perception was reflected in opinion polls, which showed a surge in his approval ratings. Pierre Poilievre's political evolution has been nothing short of remarkable. He has transformed from a brash populist into a more moderate and thoughtful leader. He has shown a willingness to evolve his positions and adopt a more inclusive tone. He has taken strong stances on issues of national importance, demonstrating his commitment to defending Canadian values and interests. This evolution has not gone unnoticed by the Canadian public. Poilievre's approval ratings have steadily climbed. He is now seen as a viable alternative to Trudeau. Many Canadians now view him as someone who possesses the experience, temperament and vision to lead the country. While his stance on issues like defunding the CBC still generates debate, there's no denying Poilievre's impact on the political landscape. Whether he ultimately succeeds in his bid to become Prime Minister remains to be seen. However, one thing is certain. Pierre Poilievre has come a long way from his early days as a political firebrand. He has emerged as a more mature and formidable leader, one who is ready to take on the challenges facing Canada.